Shana Tova Nashuva. I once heard a story about a holy man, a Hasidic rabbi. And he was so revered that people in need would come to him every day from morning till night, seeking his blessing. And one day, a woman in her 40s comes to this Rabbi, and he's accustomed to people coming seeking his blessing. So he says, "What is it that you need?" Silence. And he says, "Are you struggling with infertility? Do you need a blessing for children?" And she says, "No, thanks God. We have children." And he says, "Are you seeking a blessing that your children would find a soulmate?" And she says, "No, thank God. The children are all married." And he says, "Are you praying that they should have children?" And she says, "No, thank God. We have beautiful grandchildren." And the rabbi says, "Well, do you need a blessing for sustenance? Are you having financial troubles?" And she says, "No, we get by. Everything's fine." And he says, "Is it health? Are you seeking a blessing for healing for yourself or for a loved one?" And she says, "No, thanks God. Baruch Hashem. Everybody's healthy." And he says, "So tell me, what is it? What is the blessing that you've come here for?" She looks at him. Their eyes meet. And she says, "Rabbi, the blessing I want from you is, let it not be taken away." A sigh comes from the very depths of this rabbi. And he reaches up just to straighten the kippah on top of his bald head. And as he touches his shiny head, he remembers the beautiful red curls that used to adorn his head. And he thinks to himself, even my own hair, I couldn't prevent from getting taken away. The rabbi, who's accustomed to bestowing blessings from morning till night, falls silent. Nashuva. Life includes loss. And love includes heartbreak. And every single Yom Kippur, we pray those haunting words, who will live and who will die, who by fire and who by water. And those ancient words have never felt more alive this year. And now more than ever, since October 7th, that woman's blessing request, let it not be taken away, suddenly seems so naive and so futile. Since October 7th, so much has been taken away from our people. Here in the U.S., the sense of security we've had as Jews, the sense that we've walked with, has been shaken. I'm thinking of a mother who called me to tell me that her son is in college and he's afraid to leave his dorm room. And the rabbi of Columbia University, who I recently met with, who described the vicious anti-Semitic hate speech he never imagined that his students would have to face. And the alliances he worked for 14 years to build. He told me, those allies, the allies I thought I had on campus, are not allies. And a father who wrote to me right after Yom Kippur, telling me how he and his family had actually bumped into Nashuva on Rosh Hashanah last year while they were biking in Clover Park, and how blown away they were by Nashuva. He said, "We finally found our spiritual home." They were so excited and what it meant to them. But that same excited father told me, Rabbi, after October 7th, I didn't know how to explain to my young children what happened to Jews on October 7th. I wanted to protect my kids. He had no words, only fear. So they stopped lighting candles on Shabbat. They stopped coming to Nashuva. Was it even safe to come? So much has been taken away. And in Israel, I plan to go to Israel this summer to a rabbinical seminar in Jerusalem. And even before I left, people were telling me, are you sure you want to go there? It doesn't seem safe, and all the major airlines have canceled their flights, and my doctor says, Rabbi, please be safe. And it already was clear to me that even before I went to Israel, that just the sheer thought of Israel as a joyous destination to look forward to visiting has been taken away. And when I got off the airplane, the hallways of the airport, what you normally see, happy billboards everywhere. The whole airport is lined with photos of the hostages. And that moving sidewalk, it's lined with photos of the hostages. And I see already it's not the same place. There's so much grief in the air. And one of my husband Rob's oldest friends, Gili, he picks us up from the airport. There's a warm reunion and hugs, and we sit down in a cafe. We haven't seen Gili since October 7th, and when we say to Gili, "Oy, we're so sorry," and how to even begin to offer comfort for all the many layers of the loss, he just says, "Ein milim." There's no words. In Hebrew, the 7th of October is called Shiva be'October, which means sitting Shiva of October. And it really is that way. The country is still sitting Shiva. Everyone has been touched by loss. And the hostages are still being held in Gaza. The whole country is still in this state of intense pain, open wounds that haven't had a chance to heal. And Gili tells us that they're very close with Hirsch Goldberg Poland's parents. They belong to the same small Orthodox congregation. Gili's children grew up with Hirsch. They're close friends. Gili tells us that every week they go to a demonstration demanding that Israel's government need to do more to free the hostages. And every week, he also washes the laundry for Israelis who have been displaced from the north. He washes their laundry, and he irons their laundry, and he folds their laundry. Just small ways, small and large ways Israelis are taking care of each other. And the next day, I go to the rabbinical seminar at the Hartman Institute, and all the rabbis are there at the opening meeting, 150 of us from around the world. And what do you expect from the opening meeting? And the first thing we hear is, you need to know where the bomb shelter is. And wherever you're staying, the first question you have to ask is, whether it's a hotel or an Airbnb or you're staying with a friend, your first question has to be, where's the bomb shelter? So much has been taken away. And then I meet my Israeli colleagues, the conservative rabbis of Israel, and every single one of them has congregants who've been murdered. Every one of them has congregants who are serving now in the army, and every one of them has congregants who are hostages. And that means that another thing that's been taken away is simply coming to synagogue for Shabbat as a time to pray and see friends. Every prayer service is a time of deep pain. Every Shabbat, there's just so much trauma. And there was a famous Israeli chef named Moshe Bassan who wrote a cookbook that came out last year on October 7th. As you can imagine, nobody was in the mood to talk about a cookbook. And of course, his restaurant was closed because of the war. But last year, my husband Rob wrote a piece in the foreword about Moshe's cookbook, and it spurred people all over the world to buy Moshe's book in support of his work. And now that we're in Israel, Moshe invites us one night to his restaurant. It's called Eucalyptus. The restaurant sits in Chutzot HaYotzer, which are these stone steps that sit right beneath the ancient walls of the old city that were all lit up above us. And it was so beautiful. And Moshe brought every single dish on his entire menu. Every single item. More and more and more plates kept coming. Oh my God. The flavors and the aromas, we just felt like we were eating in the Garden of Eden. Moshe reminds us that he's an Iraqi Jew. And those who say that Israel is filled with white colonizers have to remember that the majority of Israel's Jews are Mizrahi, Jews who were expelled from Arab lands. And while we're eating, we hear a celebration that's coming from above. It's the swearing-in ceremony of a new group of young soldiers. And in Israel, it's a very sacred ceremony, a time of pride and a rite of passage. But I can't imagine what is going through the minds of those mothers and those fathers. I don't know how they do it. And I look around as we're sitting in those famous steps, and I realize that in Israel, in summertime, those steps would normally be packed with people. And now all the sites. If you've ever been to Israel in the summer, Ben Yehuda Street, all of those sites are empty. There are no tourists. So much has been taken away. After we're done eating, I say to Rob, let's go to the Kotel. It's just up the stairs through the ancient gates. And we walk up to the Kotel at midnight. And I am singing to myself the words from the book of Lamentations. Echa yashva vadad. How this city sits alone. How she used to be teeming with people, and now she sits alone. Those ancient words are so alive. And I come closer to the Kotel, to the women's side, and there are no tourists. It's only Israelis at midnight. I walk closer and closer. It's a wall of sobbing, of women just rocking and shaking. I can feel it, the vibration of all those women sobbing without words, tears pouring, mothers, wives, sisters, grandmothers, daughters, girlfriends. I press my lips to the wall. My cheeks are wet. I write a note to God to place in the crack in the wall. Those little notes to God, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. There's no space. But those stones always make room for one more. For our pain, for our prayers. This wall that's been bearing witness for 2,000 years. And in the morning I come to class and teacher after teacher say the same thing. En milim. There's no words. And the trauma. And the layers upon layers of what has been taken away, it's like peeling an onion. And the tears that come with it. Taken away. The belief that Israel understood Hamas and that the situation in Gaza was quiet. It's been taken away. that the security barrier that Israel spent billions of dollars to build was actually a defense. Taken away, that Israeli intelligence knew what was going on in Gaza and was on top of things. Taken away, that Israel's military would be there to defend its own citizens. The belief that Israel is admired by the nations of this world, that too has been taken away and replaced by so much hate. The hostages were taken away. They're still being held. And the dead, beautiful families, children, parents, the elders and the young, so much has been taken away. Taken away. The very purpose of the Zionist endeavor that Theodore Herzl spoke about. How history has taught us that we Jews in the diaspora are helpless in the face of pogroms, and we must have our own state so that we will never be defenseless victims again. October 7th took that away. One of my teachers, Rachel Korazin, she shares a poem with us called Kaddish by Asaf Gur. It begins with the words of the mourner's Kaddish. I'll say it in Hebrew, well, it's actually Aramaic, and then in English. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba v'lo ba. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. We exalt and sanctify God's holy name, and God never came. That belief in the God who protects the innocent, that too got taken away. And my big brother, David, and his wife, Etty, come to see us in Jerusalem where I'm studying. We haven't seen each other for 5 years. And I look into his eyes and I see the first words they say through the hugs, En milim. Just no words. How many funerals has my brother been to? He lives on a kibbutz in the south, just minutes from so much of the slaughter. His kibbutz was actually on Hamas's attack plan for October 7th. So many of his friends are dead. He knows many of the hostages. I see him playing with his beautiful grandchildren. And the joy of just being in my niece's home with the kids and the music and the Israeli MTV and the games and being around children can take away a world of grief. But I see in my brother's eyes that dream to be able to protect these little ones from air raids and from witnessing the tears of adults. That dream has been taken away. And we rabbis travel to the south together. We go to Nir Oz, a kibbutz that's just carnage, bullet holes, the burnt remains of home after home. We go to the dining hall, bullet holes everywhere through the glass. The tables and the chairs are set and sit empty. And the sukkah from last October, it's still standing, with the palm fronds all brown and caved in. The shelter that was no shelter. And the home of the kibbutz musician, and all that remains are mangled piano wires sitting among the ashes. I go into the kindergarten. Some of those children are no longer alive. Some of them have been kidnapped. And I look on the wall, and I see those hooks with the names, where each child puts their sweater and their knapsack. And I see the sweet art project from last year. Little clay pomegranates for Rosh Hashanah. There's a big handmade sign with cut out letters. It says, Shana Tova Umetuka Gmar Chatima Tova, and it's all burnt. May you have a blessed, sweet new year in ruins, in the ashes, all that hope, all those prayers, all that innocent. And we come upon the wall of the mailboxes. It's a golden metal wall, and on just about every other mailbox, there's a strip of tape. And on the tape it says, Chatuf, Harug, kidnapped, murdered. On just about every other box, there's a piece of tape showing who's been murdered and who's been kidnapped. And on one mailbox, there are 4 pieces of tape. Chatuf, 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 Chatuf. It's the Bibas family. Kvir Bibas, the youngest of the hostages, who was just 9 months old. And we're still waiting and praying for their return. I felt like I was standing before the kotel. I wanted to put a prayer note in this wall of mailboxes. I wanted to press my lips to this wall. There's shattered glass everywhere. And for some reason, I kneel down and I pick up a few pieces of shattered glass from the bullet holes in the glass doors, and I put them in my pocket. I suppose I want to remind myself not to forget. And then we drove to the Nova Festival grounds. So harrowing to stand on that holy ground soaked with the blood of young, beautiful people who had just come to dance together. It's haunting, knowing what took place there, the murder, the rape, the hostages. Everywhere you look, there's a memorial stake in the ground and the face of a young, beautiful woman or a beautiful young man. I walk inside the bomb shelter where people were huddled together hiding, where they lost their lives when Hamas terrorists tossed grenades in there. We go to visit the Rape Crisis Center that is treating the women who were violated on October 7th. And I see the art the women have created as part of their healing. We meet with a woman named Liat from Nir Oz, who was a hostage for 54 days. She's a historian, and she works at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum. And she tells us, at Yad Vashem, there's an exhibit when you first walk in, and it's called Life Before. What a shtetl looked like before the Holocaust. Liat tells us that every day as she walks into work, that exhibit sends shock waves through her body. Life before? Because her way of life is gone. And her husband is murdered. Her kibbutz is in ruins. So much has been taken away. And then it's time for us to return to Jerusalem. And all of us rabbis get on a bus. And usually, when you get a bunch of rabbis on a bus, you will hear a lot of talking. En milim. There are no words. Rob and I go to a rally for the hostages with thousands of Israelis chanting, "Bring the hostages home now." People who love Israel deeply, who are protesting their government, who have lost faith in their own government. So much has been taken away. We go to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. There are heart-wrenching art installations to raise awareness, to not forget the hostages. Everywhere it says, "Bring them home now." In the center, there's a long, long table covered in ash. It looks like a Passover Seder with empty seats and prayers that these seats will be filled. But for now, they lie empty. And month after month, there are more and more who will never return. We leave Hastert Square and walk through the streets of Tel Aviv. There are no tourists. But there are young Israelis sitting outside in cafes and bars and pubs, and music and life and joy and romance. An Israeli brand of resilience. The very next night, a drone bomb goes off in Tel Aviv, right in the area where we had just been the night before. The man who was killed in that bombing was an immigrant from Belarus who fled Putin's oppression for refuge in Israel. So much has been taken away. The next day at my seminar, we study a poem called Mom is Always Right by Itai Lev. It's written from the point of view of a child who says, Mom said, when I grew up, there would be no army. It wasn't there when I heard the screaming outside. It wasn't there when the door was kicked in. It wasn't there when I hid under the bed. Mom had said that when I grew up, there would be no army. Mom was right. Now all I want is to tell her that she is always right. At the Hartman Institute where I'm studying, one of my professors tells us that now in Israel there is a loss of hope that we'll ever see peace in our own lifetimes. Another professor speaks about the heartbreak she feels for the innocent citizens of Gaza. And Milim, no words, no way to come together. She invites me to a gathering in the park. She calls it a gathering of voices. She says there'll be no speeches, just the sounds that come from our bodies. I don't know what she's talking about, but I feel the need to go. I go to Independence Park in Jerusalem, Gan Ha'atzmaut, and there are hundreds of people sighing and weeping, giving voice to the experience of En Milim, of no words. And I can see defenses come down. Not the defense wall and not the Iron Dome, the wall of our own personal defenses. And I look up and I lock eyes with a rabbi I know. We're not close friends. We just know each other. Like, that's a colleague. But when our eyes lock, we just walk toward each other and we just fall into each other's arms with such intimacy and tenderness. No words. It turns out that his father was liberated by Rabbi Marcus from Buchenwald. And as I stood there in this gathering of sound without words, I remembered that I had once spent quite a bit of time studying the Hebrew word tehom, the deep. In the beginning, in the very beginning of the Bible, it says that there's actually something that pre-existed creation. It's called tehom. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu ve'choshech al pnei tehom. Tehom is an eternal, divine, watery deep. And it's from Tehom that all life springs, it's a generative realm. And in Jewish thought, Tehom isn't just that place from where all of creation springs, it's also inside of us. We each have Tehom within us. In Hebrew, the sound that babies make before they acquire language, we call it cooing. Ooh, ah. In Hebrew, it's called hemiyah, which means the sound of Tehom. And it's this sound that's more immediate than words, because once we acquire language, Tehom gets lost in translation. In the Bible, in the Psalms, it says, Tehom el Tehom koreh. Deep calls out to deep. Your Tehom calls to the divine Tehom, and you have the power to reach your Tehom, and through that to be connected on a very deep level to somebody else's Tehom. And there's no words, ein milim. And there's no need for words. And as I say, Tehom is not silent. Tehom can take the form of singing. Tehom is laughter. Tehom is weeping. The sound of Tehom is the sound you make when you experience beauty. You go to the Grand Canyon and a sound emerges from you. Ah. And you try to explain what you saw to your friend, and there's no picture you've taken that can capture it. And there's no word you can say that can capture it, just the sound. We've all experienced Tehom. It's the sound of awe, which is what we are here hoping to reach on this day of awe. And in the Torah, the sound of the shofar is the sound of Tehom. And when we hear the shofar, it awakens our Tehom. And when on Yom Kippur, we put our hand to our heart, we do that not to beat our heart. That was a mistake Moses made when he hit the rock. We put hand to heart to awaken your Tehom, to connect with the sacred, deep, generative place inside of us. Because Tehom is the place of our creativity. It's the place of poetry. It's the place of music. It's the place of tears. It's the place of love. It's fertile. And we're here on Yom Kippur to touch Tehom, to allow deep to call to deep, and deep to call to deep. In the face of trauma and hurt, sometimes the opening to the realm of Tehom inside us gets sealed like a stone that covers a well. And access to those fertile waters becomes blocked. And going to the deep can feel frightening until we remember that it's the place from which everything is born. And by putting hand to heart, we're creating space for an opening, for healing to come in, for the light to enter, for those fertile waters to nourish what has become parched and hard inside of us. And that is the beginning of forgiveness. Kol Nidre asks us to annul vows. And I believe on this Kol Nidre, since October 7th, we come here to annul the vow of hopelessness. The vow of, I don't know how to hope anymore. I don't know if we'll ever see peace in our lifetime anymore. The survivors of the Nova Festival, their motto is, Anachnu nirkod shuv. And that shuv sounds familiar, doesn't it? It should, because it's the same root of Nashuva, we will return. And it's also the same root of Teshuvah, what we're here for this Yom Kippur. Knowing that we have the power to return and repair our lives no matter how far we have strayed. In the case of the Nova survivors, that shuv means we will return to dancing. We will dance again. It will not be taken away. Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, also speaks of tehom, nefesh Yehudi homiyah. That there is a deep tehom within every Jew, making the sound of yearning, saying, Od lo avda tikvatenu. Our hope has not yet been lost. Our hope has not been taken away. Recently, I received a letter from that father who found Nashuva last year on his bike in Clover Park, who told me how their family's celebration of Jewish life got taken away on October 7th. And he said to me, Rabbi, I just want you to know that we lit candles again for the very first time this Shabbat. And I want you to know that our daughter wants to become a bat mitzvah. Can we do that with you? And as I read his note, it took me right back to the blessing request of that woman from the holy rabbi. Rabbi, the blessing I seek is, let it not be taken away. It seems like an impossible blessing to offer anyone. But that is the blessing I want to offer you this Yom Kippur. If you can touch to home this Yom Kippur, you will understand that there is a place that can't possibly be taken away. Not even death can take it because it's eternal and it's yours. It's your Tehom, the very home of you in Tehom. And as I was thinking about this in my car, using my GPS, I was putting in my address and my phone blurted out, calculating directions to home. Nashuva, we're here to return. But what about God who never came? Blessed be God's holy name, and God never came. How do we make sense of that heartbreaking lament? If you go deep to the place of Tehom, you will know that God never left. You will catch a vision of God, not as an iron dome and not as a Marvel superhero's protection. You will encounter God as connection. Your home in God, God's home in you, and you will know you are never alone. And the Zionist dream for a safe homeland, it will not be taken away. We won't let it be. And to the Yad from Kibbutz Nir Oz, who works at Yad Vashem, the shtetls of Eastern Europe are gone. But the kibbutzim of Israel, north and south, aren't going anywhere, and they will not be taken away. Nir Oz, Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Nachal Oz, they will rise from the ashes as we sing every Shabbat, V'nivneta ir al Tilah. They will be rebuilt on their ruins. And Zion, who sits alone, will once again be teeming with tourists, as we read on Rosh Hashanah, Yesh tikva l'achavitech. There is hope for your future, says the Lord. And Nashuva, if peace is going to come, it won't come from heaven. It will come tehom el tehom, from deep to deep. Rachel Goldberg Poland, the mother of Hirsch of blessed memory, wrote these words dreaming of the peace one day between Israel and Gaza. She wrote, and I know that way over there, there's a woman who looks just like me. because we are so very similar. And she has also been crying. All those tears, a sea of tears, they all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up, remove the salt, and pour them over our desert of despair and plant one tiny seed? A seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, war, and hope, and see what grows? Nashuva, peace is going to come to home. Rachel made a bold statement this year with such deep conviction. She said, hope is mandatory. Nashuva, we're here tonight to annul the vow we have taken to hopelessness and the impossibility of peace. And we've been given 25 hours. Use them to awaken to home. Let the melodies lift you. Let the sound your own body makes, every sigh and coo and song, lead you to sweetness. Let the sound of the shofar awaken a great hope, deep, eternal strength, primal and pure, at home in hope, rising higher and higher and higher still. Nashuva, this is my blessing to you this Yom Kippur, but it's not only a blessing, it must be our work. Let it not be taken away. Let's take it, Nashuva, higher and higher and higher still. Shana Tova. Amen.